You know what really drives a customer to grab the same product off the shelf week in, week out without even thinking about it? A lot of people assume it's some deep love for the brand, but honestly, it's often something way more powerful and, well, almost invisible. We're talking about habit. So let's really unpack this hidden force.
All right, to kick things off, I've got a story for you. It's a pretty high-stakes cautionary tale, actually, about a really beloved brand that learned all about the power of habit the hard way. So, picture this. It's 2009, and Tropicana decides its pure premium orange juice brand needs a facelift. You know, a refresh. And they didn't just dip their toes in the water, they went all in, pouring a staggering $35 million into a massive advertising and packaging redesign. The goal? To totally rejuvenate the brand.
So, what happened? An absolute unmitigated disaster. Seriously, within just 2 months, 2 months of the new look hitting shelves, sales just plummeted. We're talking a drop of over 20%. That massive multi-million-dollar investment? It basically vaporized a fifth of their sales, almost overnight. Just gone.
So, where did they go so wrong? Well, the problem was the sheer scope of the change. They didn't just tweak one little thing. No, they changed everything. The core image, that iconic orange with a straw stuck in it, gone, replaced with a really generic-looking glass of orange juice. They flipped the logo from horizontal to vertical, which, by the way, made it way harder to read at a glance. They even moved key info like pure premium. Basically, they broke every single visual cue their customers were used to all at once, and the fallout was so bad they were forced into this really humiliating retreat back to the original design.
So, you gotta ask yourself, right? How on earth does a simple packaging change lead to such a massive, catastrophic failure? I mean, it's just a carton. To really get the answer, we have to look past the usual marketing talk. We need to dive into something a little deeper, something you could almost call the physics of human habit.
See, the thing is, Tropicana's big failure wasn't because people rationally decided they hated the new design. It wasn't a conscious choice. Nope. It was because they disrupted this incredibly powerful psychological force called behavioral loyalty.
Now, this isn't the kind of loyalty you might be thinking of, the deep emotional connection to a brand. This is different. This is all about your brain on autopilot. It's that simple, routine, repetitive action of buying something just because, well, it's what you always buy. You don't even think about it.
And the core idea here, believe it or not, can be explained perfectly by Galileo's famous work on inertia. Yeah, high school physics. But trust me, this isn't just a physics lesson. It's a really profound insight into how consumers actually behave.
Okay, let's break this down. Imagine that first time a customer deliberately buys your product. They're actually thinking about it, weighing the options. Which orange juice should I get? That initial decision, that's like gravity. It's the force that gets the ball rolling down the ramp. But here's the magic part. Every single purchase after that, where they just reach out and grab the carton without a second thought, that's pure inertia. The habit itself is now the thing keeping the ball rolling.
Okay, so how does this happen? What are the right conditions, the magic ingredients, for this powerful purchasing inertia to actually kick in and create that autopilot customer we're talking about?
Well, it really boils down to 3 key factors. First, you need frequency. The behavior has to happen often, like buying groceries every week. Second, it needs to be simple. The action has to be dead easy. Find it on the shelf, drop it in the cart. No complexity. And third, you need consistent outcomes. The result has to be reliable and predictable every single time. You get the product you expect. When you nail all 3 of these, the brain says, okay, I don't need to waste energy on this anymore, and it just starts to automate the whole process.
And this gets right to that classic idea of System 1 and System 2 thinking. Your rational, deliberate brain, that's System 2. It makes that first choice. But habitual buying? That completely outsources the job to System 1, the fast, intuitive, unconscious part of your brain. And you know what? It's incredibly efficient. It saves us a ton of mental energy, and honestly, it reduces the perceived risk of making a bad choice. Why? Because it relies on simple, trustworthy visual cues, not some deep analytical evaluation every time you're in the grocery aisle.
But here's the catch. Because that habit relies on the fast, effortless System 1, it's also incredibly fragile. It's like a delicate circuit. It's super vulnerable to any little change in those simple visual cues it uses to navigate the world. You mess with the cues, you break the circuit.
Now, the Tropicana story is obviously really dramatic, but trust me, they are not the only ones to make this mistake, not by a long shot. Let's take a look at Coca-Cola. They had this big holiday campaign, a really well-intentioned effort to help support polar bear conservation.
So, to get people's attention, Coke decided to do something pretty radical. They took their world-famous, instantly recognizable color scheme and they just inverted it. They changed the iconic red can to a white one. I guess they wanted it to be disruptive, right? The problem was, it disrupted the wrong thing. All of a sudden, the regular Coke can looked almost identical to the silver can of Diet Coke.
And the change was so jarring that loyal customers, just running on that autopilot we talked about, started grabbing the wrong product. The backlash was swift and it was fierce. See, people weren't just confused, they were genuinely annoyed. Their simple, mindless, habitual purchase had suddenly turned into a mental chore. They had to stop and think, and they did not like it.
I mean, this case is just a brilliant illustration of the point. Even when it's for a great cause, you just can't break that loyalty loop. Coca-Cola ended up having to pull the white cans months ahead of schedule. It was a total retreat. The lesson? Those simple visual cues their customers relied on were just too important to mess with.
Okay, so if drastic change is this dangerous, it raises a huge question, right? How is a brand ever supposed to evolve? How can you modernize your look and feel without completely destroying the very habits that are the bedrock of your success? Well, for that, we can look to the brand Olay. They basically gave a masterclass in how to do this the right way, and you could argue they faced an even bigger challenge than Tropicana. Think about it. The word oil was right there in their name, Oil of Olay, and it was starting to have all these negative, greasy associations for people. So what did they do? Here's the crucial part. Instead of a sudden, jarring, rip-the-Band-Aid off overhaul like Tropicana, Olay rolled out its transformation gradually. And we're talking a comprehensive change. Name, logo, packaging, the whole shebang. But they did it slowly, patiently, over the course of almost a decade.
The contrast here just couldn't be starker, could it? Tropicana's approach was abrupt, all at once. Olay's was gradual, spread out over years. And get this, Olay's change was actually bigger in scope. I mean, they changed their actual name. But because they paced it so strategically, they gave their loyal, habitual customers time to adapt. They let them come along for the ride. And in doing so, they completely avoided the confusion and the backlash that torpedoed Tropicana.
And this really brings us to the bottom line. A successful brand evolution is all about a delicate balance. It's about balancing that desire for change with the absolute need for continuity. You have to respect the habits you've built, and that means you first have to understand what those primary visual cues are that your customers are using, and then you change them slowly, methodically, not all at once. So this really leaves us with a critical question, one that any business leader should ask themselves. Before you launch that next big, exciting redesign or campaign, you have to stop and ask, is this innovation going to disrupt my competition, or is it going to disrupt my own loyal customers? Because understanding the power of behavioral loyalty, well, that's the key to making absolutely sure you disrupt the right one.